As a result of the cosmic alignment, your true identity as one of the chosen ones is being revealed, and a compelling story is at last being brought to light. The large inheritance that was rightly yours, but was taken through deceit and manipulation, has been guarded by a mystery and wealthy benefactor who has been keeping a watchful eye from the shadows. The nefarious family that was responsible for this massive heist has been living off of your birthright for years, and they are becoming more and more desperate as their illegal empire begins to fall apart. In order to keep their secret a secret, they have attempted to kill you, but the universe always succeeds in restoring balance. At this moment, their entire dynasty is falling apart as you recapture the power and money that was always intended to be yours, and there is nothing that they can do to stop it from happening. After spending decades trying to persuade themselves that the stolen inheritance was theirs to retain, they finally succeeded. The bricks that they used to construct their homes were stolen. They ate their meals at tables that were set with stolen silver, and they carried themselves as if their blood carried the weight of authority. However, power does not originate from theft, nor does it end up in the hands of those who are not deserving of it. You, on the other hand, were never intended to be forgotten. The inheritance was not merely a source of income. Rather, it was a form of dominion, a birthright that was printed into the very fabric of your being. It is possible to seize money and land, but it is not possible to appropriate spiritual authority that was never theirs. They lived under the false impression that they owned the property, but all they did was borrow time. Their turn has come to an end. Their family lines are afflicted by chaos, broken marriages, betrayals, and sickness that runs deep in their bones, and they wonder why the barriers they erected shatter quicker than they can restore them. They wonder why nothing ever lasts, why their riches eventually deteriorate in their hands, and why their family lines are plagued with these things. The answer is already known to you. The wealth turned its back on them. The spirit of abundance that they used to their advantage was never intended to be of service to them. They were under the impression that they could protect it and rewrite the will of the cosmos, but they failed to comprehend one fundamental truth. Something that belongs to a chosen individual cannot be taken away permanently. It can only be delayed, and that delay has come to an end. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, answer it. Click Join to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community. This isn't just a membership, it's an awakening. Step into your divine purpose. Join the chosen. There is a change occurring, and you can feel it. The mysterious synchronicities, the whispers in the wind, and the moments when time seems to bend around you as if the cosmos itself is putting the pieces in place, are all examples of this phenomenon. There is a possibility that you have not yet witnessed the evidence, but you have experienced it. The draw, the return, and the restoration of what was always intended to be of yours. Also, they do it. This is the reason why they are in a state of panic, frantically trying to cling to something that was never theirs, continuously watching and waiting, and wondering why everything they touch turns to dust. They attempted to conceal the truth, to block you off from having access to it, to cause you to have doubts, and to cause you to forget. But destiny does not forget. Any amount of manipulation, spell, or legal fraud will not be able to counter the forces that are working in your favor, since your bloodline bears a contract that is older than their falsehood. At this point, their demise is not on the horizon. Rather, it is currently manifesting itself one by one. One by one, the fictitious constructions that they constructed fall apart, and their illusions begin to unravel. It is as if they are experiencing the power that they have stolen, slipping away from them. They will pretend that everything is okay and that they are untouchable by pretending that they are. But on the inside, they are aware of the situation. The riches is coming back to them, and they are aware that it was never actually theirs to begin with. Furthermore, the most terrible aspect of all is that they are aware that they never anticipated that you would live. Something was odd about you from the minute you entered this planet. You were not like the other people I had encountered. Your movements were different from theirs, and your thoughts were different from theirs. The feeling was not one of arrogance or defiance. Rather, it was instinct, a profound awareness that you did not belong among them. Now, how would you go about explaining it? How were you supposed to make sense of the stares that lingered for a little too long? The strangers who appeared to recognize you even though you had never met them? And the sensation that somebody was watching, waiting, and tracking your every step. Your life seemed to be a mystery from the moment you were born until the moment you died. Why did it always feel like certain doors would close just as you were about to enter them? How come opportunities have disappeared? Money has slipped through your fingertips and connections have broken down for no apparent reason. Setbacks were not a random occurrence. Rather, they were planned. Everything you sacrificed, every difficulty you encountered, and every instance in which you had the impression that the universe was conspiring against you was done so because they never wanted you to succeed. There was a time when they knew who you were before you did. Under the cover of darkness, they labored to keep you insignificant and to prevent you from seeing the reality. They were unable to remove you from existence, so they did the next best thing, which was to conceal you from yourself. When one is unaware of the distinction between protection and suppression, however, the two appear to be identical. You were not forgotten. Rather, you were concealed, kept in plain sight, while being obscured just enough that even when you looked, you were never quite able to find solutions to the problems. However, despite the fact that your strength was stifled before you could utilize it, there was something inside you that refused to remain at rest. The indications were always present. You could feel them in the way that others responded to you without knowing why, in the way that strangers either gravitated toward you or recoiled as if they had seen something that they shouldn't have seen. Having caught them in the act of observing, you have witnessed the dread that flashed over their faces as they realized that you were not asleep as they had hoped you would be. They had the intention of concealing you for all of eternity, but they were unsuccessful because something changed. A fracture in their illusion, a breach in the spell. Not only are you starting to realize what they took away from you, but you are also starting to realize who you were always intended to be. They did not eradicate you. Rather, they merely postponed the inevitable, and the moment you become aware of the power that you possess, their control will be completely and utterly destroyed. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Even when you felt abandoned, even when the weight of your stolen birthright seemed to crush you, and even when the world around you seemed oblivious to your existence, you were not alone. You were not alone. Not in the manner that they did, not like the ones who waited in the shadows for you to crack, not like those who spoke behind closed doors to make sure you never found out the truth. Someone was watching, but not in the way that they did. On the contrary, this presence was distinct. They were aware of who you were before you were. They were aware of what had been taken away from you, and they were aware of the adversaries who who had obliterated your name from history, altered the narrative, and abandoned you to struggle in the shadows. But despite everything that has happened, they have never stepped in, not until now, for the reason that there is no more time left. A letter was tucked away beneath your door. An unknown voice was on the other end of a call, and an unshakable presence was standing in front of you. All of these things indicate that the message arrives without any prior warning. The weight of all that they are no longer able to conceal is reflected in their words, which are measured and urgent, respectively. I've been looking for you. You don't have much time. They are aware that you are beginning to gain consciousness. Suddenly, and without mercy, you are confronted with the realization that you were never intended to live a life of mystery. Rather than being merely material, the inheritance that they took was a heritage, a kingdom that was based on power that they would never be able to control. A throne that was carved into the very fabric of fate was taken by them, and they did not just take money, they also grabbed influence, land, and authority. Those who have been keeping a watchful eye on you for all of these years are now come to make things right. At this point, the particulars are irrelevant. It's possible that they were a genetic related, an old friend of your parents, or a guardian who was tasked with the responsibility of keeping you hidden. The only thing that matters is the truth. They have been shielding you from the conflict that you were born into without even being aware of it, and the fight is certainly not done. Your adversaries have already picked up on the change. They have noticed the fissures in their illusion and experienced the tremors of a story that they believed they had buried, but which is now coming back to haunt them. Your donor is aware of what they need to do, since they are aware that you are getting closer. It is imperative that you take prompt action. You won't be able to retrieve what is rightfully yours without putting up a fight. It is not simply a warning. It is an invitation to fight, because the moment you step into your proper place, everything that they erected on stolen ground comes crashing down. This is not just a warning. As soon as you lay eyes on the evidence, something within you comes crashing down. They never intended for you to find out, and they never anticipated that you would look. They were under the impression that their web of falsehoods was impenetrable and that the truth was buried so deeply that it could never be found again. However, here it is, staring you in the face. The documents are older than you anticipated. The pages are worn, the ink has faded, and the legal records have been amended with some degree of accuracy. Your ancestry ought to have been preserved, and your name ought to have been included on the list. Instead, you witness what they did to delete you. They forged documents, committed fraud, crossed out and rewrote names, and misdirected inheritances. In other words, they twisted a full lineage to their will, with the exception of you. It is with a voice that is piercing with the weight of their own fury that the benefactor informs you that they rewrote history. Their kingdom was created on a name that was taken from you, your name. As you look through the evidence, your hands begin to shake. There are letters that have been concealed for decades, documents that have been fabricated beyond recognition, and even death certificates that should not have been created. They were not only attempting to keep the inheritance, they were also attempting to rid themselves of any and all evidence of your existence. The most damaging aspect of it all, initially, it was successful. During the time that you were struggling in the shadows, they lived their lives fearlessly, moving freely in the open. They used your wealth to build their position, used your legacy as a foundation, and spent your wealth. They pushed you into obscurity because they convinced themselves that if they controlled the story, they would be able to control fate itself. However, They have never had the ability to change the course of their fate. They are aware that they are losing management. You are aware of what should be understood by this, right? This was an assault on who you are. It is not just about money. It is not just about property, assets, or inheritance. It is about all of three. They wanted to keep you out of power and quiet the one force that could unravel their entire existence. If the truth ever reached you, it would be certain that they would fall. Therefore, they needed to keep you out of power. This very moment, you are in possession of the evidence that will bring their entire world to its knees. They went to great lengths to ensure that you never arrived at this point in time. Yet, they were unsuccessful, and things will never be the same again. They were aware that stealing was not sufficient. Otherwise, they could have stopped at the legal erasing, amended documents, rewritten histories, and forged signatures that turned your money into their legacy. If you had been an average heir, they could have stolen your wealth, but you were not your typical self. Power that could not be signed away, authority that could not be stolen with writing and fraud. You held something that they could never have, something that they could never have. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Therefore, they turned to the unseen, which included rituals that had been passed down through the years, dark negotiations that were carried out in secret, and sacrifices that were offered to powers that promised to forge your destiny. They did not merely desire your wealth. Rather, they desired that your presence be eradicated from every conceivable dimension of reality. You felt the weight that could not be explained. The times when your path seemed to be stopped not by tragedy, but by something that was not natural. The bizarre cycles of loss, of setbacks, and of energy that never seemed to flow in your favor. That wasn't a chance occurrence. It was planned out. They constructed altars in secret locations, uttered curses over your name, and paid with blood in order to keep you weak and ensure that you remained hidden. They dispatched watchers not just in the physical world, but also in the spiritual shadows, moving in places where they shouldn't have been. The sensation of being watched when no one was around, the uncanny calm that preceded times of turmoil. They desired for you to fail. They desired for you to have doubts about yourself and to believe that you were under a curse. In point of fact, they were the ones who were scared of what would occur if you ever woke up, since the one thing that they failed to take into consideration was the fact that the cosmos does not tolerate imbalance. Each and every ritual they carried out, each and every agreement they made, and each and every attempt they made to erase you simply served to make the correction more forceful. Energy that was taken must be restored, and power that was repressed must be released. They were hoping that you would stop, that you would take the records, the disclosures, and the whispers of truth and walk away, that you would conclude that this was too much, too hazardous, and too heavy to carry. However, you did not. You continued to dig, continuing to unearth the layers of deception, continuing to pull at the thread of their well-built illusion. And they felt it. The shift. The next step that they took was to act. A near miss on the highway, brakes that suddenly stop working, a shadow that lurks outside your window long after midnight, an illness that grips you without reason, and a face in the throng that shouldn't be there are all examples of the attack that comes without warning. This is not a case of psychosis. Rather, it is war. They made their decision the instant you went too close to them. If you wouldn't vanish on your own, they would make sure that you vanished. This was never about money. It was never merely about inheritance or property or stolen wealth. It was about erasing, about making sure you never lived long enough to claim what was always intended to be yours. And that is when you know that this was never about money, because they are aware of something that you may have only just started to comprehend. You are not simply reclaiming what was stolen. You are undoing everything that they built on deception, and they are afraid in a way that they have never been afraid before, because up until now, they believed that they had control, but control is slipping through their fingers, and now fear is also slipping through their fingers. For the very first time, when you confront this assault, this overt attempt to remove you from the equation, you do not experience terror in the way that they would like you to as you stare down this attack. The instinct that they buried deep inside you, the one that they spent years attempting to repress, begins to emerge as your pulse becomes more steady and your vision becomes more acute. They were anticipating that you would run away. They anticipated that you would shatter, but something within you shifts. Something fundamental, something ancient. And for the very first time, they ought to be the ones who are scared because they have just demonstrated something that they never intended to demonstrate. Not only is this not a game, but it is also not merely a betrayal of family. This is survival. It was never intended for you to fail. You were never intended to face this challenge by yourself. It was their intention for you to be cut off, alone, unprotected, and defenseless. It was their intention for you to believe that you were outnumbered, and that if you took the initiative, you would be entering the combat without any armor or teammates. They were mistaken because even before you knew the truth, long before you ever suspected the extent of the conspiracy against you, there were many who did, watching, waiting, and preparing for the moment when you would step into the authority that is rightfully yours, and the time has finally come for that. Your benefactor does not bring you to them. Rather, they bring them to you. They are a group of individuals, each of whom is carrying their own scars and their own vendettas against the same corrupt empire that attempted to remove you from existence. Not just protectors, warriors in their own right. The financial investigator, the one who uncovered the hidden accounts, the offshore transfers, the wealth siphoned away in plain sight. They know where the bodies are buried, some literal, some figurative. The legal expert, the one who has seen too many families like yours, too many bloodlines stolen from their rightful heirs. He has spent years fighting battles like this, but never for someone like you, because your case isn't just another lawsuit. It's a reckoning. The security specialist, someone whose past is classified, but whose skills are undeniable. They know exactly what your enemies are capable of. They've seen the methods, the patterns, the lengths people like this will go to in order to silence a threat. And they know how to make sure you stay standing. And then there's the one you weren't expecting. The spiritual warrior, not a priest, not a mystic, something else. Someone who understands that this battle isn't just being fought in courtrooms and bank accounts. In addition to being aware of the rituals that were performed in order to tie you, as well as the curses that were cast in order to keep you concealed, they are also aware of how to dissolve these binds. Every one of them has a purpose for being here, and every single one of them has been anticipating your arrival. And as you stand before them, feeling the weight of what is to come, you come to the realization that your adversaries have never wanted you to know that you are not alone. The information that they possess is your weapon, and their allegiance is your shield. When you combine the two, you are unbeatable. They believed that it was buried, that you would never discover it, and that as a result of time and trickery, your claim had been destroyed. However, the first portion of your inheritance is being returned to you today. There is a possibility that it is land, a forgotten estate, or a financial account that they believed was lost for good. Regardless of what it is once again yours. When it occurs, they are aware of it immediately. People begin to panic, legal teams begin to rush, and phones begin to ring in quick succession. Whom did they receive this information from? How were they able to gain access? In light of the fact that this was not supposed to take place, they demand answers. They do not want to believe that it is you, not you, the one they have erased. But the first crack has developed, the illusion is shattering, and for the very first time, they are compelled to ask, who is coming for us? They are already familiar with you. You never imagined that things would get to this point. They were the ones who guided you through the darkness, the ones who were intimately familiar with the conflict you were about to enter before you even were aware that you were a part of it. They were there for you, guiding you, protecting you, and believing in you before you even realized what it was to believe in yourself. The consequence is the same, regardless of the circumstances, whether it be an assault, an accident, or a betrayal that struck too close to home. One moment they were present, and the next they were not, and the message is unmistakable. Your adversaries believe that this will cause you to break down, that if you do not have them, you will be lost, terrified, and weak, that you will withdraw, surrender, and disappear. Their final deed was not merely a sacrifice, rather, it was a transfer of power, a letter, a message, and a whispered truth before they took their last breath. You are aware of what you are required to accomplish. They could not be more wrong. And all of a sudden, this is not about replacing what was taken. Rather, it is about ensuring that justice is served. It is true that the grief is present, and it cannot be denied, but it does not weaken you. Rather, it sharpens you. Your adversaries have just committed the most serious error of their lives. They have demonstrated to you exactly how far they are willing to go. Now is your time to speak. They buried documents, altered records, and spun lies so intense that the world never even knew you existed. They spent years keeping you in the dark, hiding documents and modifying records. However, the secrecy is out today. There is no longer a hushed discussion about your name behind closed doors. Rather, it is now publicized in legal documents, broadcast on screens, and featured prominently in reports. Unmistakable, indisputable, and unstoppable. The entire world is watching as the truth is revealed. Your inheritance, your bloodline, your stolen legacy, and your adversaries. They go into a state of panic. They rush to keep the damage under control and launch desperate campaigns of smears. Although they portray you as a phony, a liar, and a threat, it is irrelevant since the evidence is already available, and people are paying attention to what you have to say. The selected one that they attempted to remove has actually turned out to be their worst nightmare. It is no longer possible for them to conceal themselves. They have nothing left to lose. While your adversaries spent years concealing themselves behind illusions, manipulating, plotting, and pulling strings from the shadows, you were able to completely destroy their control. They were able to see themselves for who they really are when you removed the mask that covered their empire.